Welcome back everyone to my mini-series. In this series what we are doing is we are finding the best zones to farm lumber in for each expansion, and for this video, as you can kind of tell, we are looking into Dragonflight, so quit dragging your feet and let's get to the video. There are two zones that are actually going to be excluded, that's the Zerlek Cavern and also the Forbidden Reach. They don't have lumber. Blizzard added something to the game without really making an official announcement, and I'm going to make an official announcement about it. Blizzard added a tracker to the lumber that we collect, and this is important because next expansion in Midnight, the amount of lumber that we collect is going to count towards an achievement, and now we can do it early. We can work on the achievement now, even without earning the achievement until midnight. That allows us to collect lumber while we are mounted. You don't have to be a druid anymore, so that's a really big plus. You need 250 lumber from each expansion, and it does unlock it for that expansion. As we just went over, we won't be going over all of the zones, and also I won't be going over them in order, for no particular reason. But I'm starting with the Oneron Plains because I think it's a really cool zone, and also there were some important things that I wanted to go over about this zone, and it's worth bringing up. There are two parts to the map in the Oneron Plains. One is the plains, of course, and then the other is small forests that are on 2 to 3 different parts of the map, depending on how big you expect a forest to be. But basically, what I have found is being in the open plains near the water is what gave me the most lumber in the Oneron Plains. I got a decent amount from this zone, and just giving you a sneak peek, I got a decent amount from all of the zones, and the Oneron Plains wasn't an exception. Even though there's not as many trees as Azure Span, for example, there's still a lot of lumber. I would say it's definitely worth coming here. One thing I did recognize is the longer I stayed here, the more competition I had because it was starting to get into the evening. And when somebody loots a lumber, there's a set amount of time before you can no longer earn it. And it just vanishes in front of you just like a normal ore or herb would. And basically that answers a question that I've had for quite some time. Does the collection of lumber impact other people's lumber collections? And the answer is yes. So if you have a very busy zone, it might make sense to actually farm it elsewhere if there's another viable area to farm. The next zone we're looking at is the Azure Span. The Azure Span is very famous for being very similar to Grizzly Hills, which is a favorite zone of many people in the game. Also myself, I really like the zone too. The Azure Span is absolutely covered in trees. We have an entire section of frozen trees, we have unfrozen trees for a different part of the map. It is just a beautiful zone, really. Like all the colors, I really like it. But trees are a really good sign. That means there's a lot of lumber to farm. Just one small portion where there's blight knolls, there's not a lot of lumber there. The Azure Span is a solid place to go. First of all, the visuals are really nice, so that's a great plus. Now, the best thing about this zone is really the amount of trees there are. Regardless of where you go in the zone, minus the blight knoll area, you're going to get the same amount of lumber, regardless if it's in the frozen area, if it's in the just normal land area that isn't frozen, you're going to get the same amount of lumber regardless of where you are in the zone. And that's really important because if there's a lot of people here farming, then there's a lot of lumber to go around and it won't feel like your lumber farm is so diluted with more people. Our third zone for this video is going to be Thaldraszus. Thaldraszus is also quite hilly, similar to two of the other zones, the Azure Span and the Waking Shores. However, we'll look at the Waking Shores later. Let's take a look at Thaldraszus and see what the lumber's like. Thaldraszus is definitely one of those hilly zones that it's hard to decide which area you should farm in. Should you go in a place that's very flat? Should you go in a place that has the most trees? And what I found is the most lumber that you're going to get is between the Timeless area and Valdrakken. And so basically it's where Soradormi is and all of the time events that were kind of below Valdrakken there. And that was the best place. So I would definitely stick around there. Everything else has lumber, but it seemed to be very consistent, and I really like consistency. The fourth, but not last zone, is the Waking Shores. I was pleasantly surprised by how many trees there are in the zone. I played the entire Dragonflight expansion, but I did not even know that there was this much lumber here, just from the trees alone. So I'm really excited to take a look at this one and see what it has to offer. The primary finding from the Waking Shores is you really should just stick around the water, just like the Oneron Plains. Staying near the water is where most of the trees grow, and the water isn't just a river, there's an entire portion of the map that's just trees, giant rocks, dragons, and water. And that means lumber to me, so I would say that's the best part of the Waking Shores. One thing I did find is the amount of lumber that I received in this zone is equivalent to the others as well. I wasn't really noticing there were any big gaps depending on where I was flying, but also it seemed to be more frequent than like Owner on Plains, for example. I would suggest staying near the water, and I think you'll be in good hands. Last but not least, we have a Mirgersill. Also from Dragonflight, this is from the last patch. This is the New World tree. And this has two different zones. One is the combat version, where it's the normal world, and the second is the Night Elf home version, which is the kind of the secondary world or shard that you can be in. For those of you that don't know, a Mirgersill is a massive tree. Massive tree. Entire zone that is one tree. You'd expect it to be full of lumber, right? Well, sort of. It actually had the lowest rate that I found out of any of the zones that I tried. It was still pretty good. I would say it's still viable to do. However, it would be worth going to a different zone instead, as the amount of lumber that I received on this farm in a Mirgersill was notably less, maybe like 10% less or so, but it was definitely noticeable. And so I would suggest the other zones, unless they're being super farmed and you can't find any free farm to get, you could always come here and have it be a backup. Or if you just want to change your scenery. Here's my strange way to interpret where to farm. Of course, you can go throughout the zones. There's definitely more lumber than what is pictured here. However, if something is circled, I just wanted to indicate that it's all lumber filled, basically. So all of the Azure span mostly. We see all of a Mirgersill. There's that Waking Shores water portion is definitely good. And then we have the Circle and Thaldraszus. These are all great farming points to collect your lumber. You can absolutely go outside of these. When I was doing these farms, maybe a lot of people were farming the super busy areas or the best areas to farm, and they just weren't showing up for me when I was flying elsewhere. However, this is what I found to be the best for myself, and hopefully it truly is the best and benefits all of us equally. And that concludes this video on the Dragonflight expansion. If you liked the video, please subscribe to my channel. You can always change your mind if you decide to in the future, but it just really helps me out. I'm actually really close to a few subscriber goals that I'm excited for, so thank you so much. And if you have any suggestions, leave a comment. Have a great day.